sustainable platform Face to Face, and we also have a magazine that we publish, also called Face to Face. At the closing of this week, on November 4th, we're going to have an event that will include the representatives of local CSOs from Probishtip, Zletovo, and Kratovo. Our idea is, as we are working face to face, not only to educate the public, but to include it into some solutions. So this conference, which will be held at the Youth Center in Probishtip, will encourage young people to create solutions that will address the challenges facing related to artificial intelligence and other phenomena such as hate speech, disinformation, misinformation, and so on. I invite you to come to Probishtip. It's not far. If you want more information, please ask for me. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Vesna Nikodinovska. I work at the Macedonian Media Institute. The Macedonian Media Institute, for the past 3 years, has been exerting efforts to include media literacy into formal education. We think this is very important to expose children to the concept of media literacy from the earliest age. Since 2021, together with the Ministry of Education and Science and the Education Development Bureau, we managed to include media literacy into the curricula from grades 1 through 9. I think it's important to have institutional support throughout the process, to have a systematic approach to include media literacy among different audiences, target audiences, different age groups. That is the only way to raise the level of media literacy among the citizens. At the conference entitled Media Literacy in Education, that will be organized on October 30th, we are going to try to present what we have done so far in formal education, with special focus on primary education. We are also going to try to present some reactions, some outcomes. What are the reactions of the teachers, the pupils, from the involving media literacy into their curricula, and we are going to present future plans to how to include media literacy into secondary education. We organize all these activities, media MIM, within the UNDP project for media literacy. Young people are thinking. Part of this project are the local partners study for and the youth forum. It is very important, as I mentioned, within this process to have institutional support and to have cooperation with the Ministry and Education Development Bureau. We're going to have one more event within the days of media literacy, 2 workshops held both on October 30 and November 1st in Kavalytsi and Struga. The topic is privacy and safe security in online space. So we have a multimedia exhibition, a glass room, organized by MIM in cooperation with the EU delegation and Tactical Tech from Berlin. These are our activities. Please come to our conference on Wednesday. The Minister of Education and Science will be present too, as well as the representative from USAID, Jerry Dybel. So you're more than welcome, and your presence would be important to develop a discussion of why media literacy in education is important. Thank you. Hello, I'm Risto Savevsky from the Youth Education Forum. Our organization has been working for 25 years to encourage critical thinking and create space where young people can express themselves freely. That is why we are joining the campaign to raise the awareness about media literacy. Colleagues from Radio MOV on November 1st and 2nd will organize a number of events, video discussion between young people and journalists about media literacy, open day, Our colleagues from Radio MOV have been organized this for a few days. The purpose is to show young people how journalists do their jobs, what it is like to be a journalist for a day. They also are preparing a story on artificial intelligence and journalism. We, as the Youth Education Forum within the project, US project, Young Our People Are Thinking, about for media literacy, we're going to have a panel discussion tomorrow, October 9, together with young members of the parliament. The topic is to have multiple stakeholders from organization, government institution, development agencies, everyone to give their feedback. What is the situation on media literacy? How much are young people aware of this concept? And most importantly, how can people with disability be involved in the concept of media literacy? I believe all these events contribute to raise the public awareness about media literacy. You're, of course, everyone is welcome. Tomorrow's event will be held at the National Assembly. Good morning. I am Monika Aksentievska from the Institution for Communication Studies. The Institution for Communication Studies, these past 3 years, has been involved in a project to create a better informed, a more critical society that will be able to navigate through the modern times and face the respective challenges. That is why we are working to educate the youngest, but also the oldest, how to identify misinformation, how to responsibly create content. Part of the activities within the Days of Media Literacy are traditionally dedicated to young people, high school students, secondary education students. We have 2 workshops, how to recognize misinformation and how to create content responsibly. The first one will be held tomorrow on October 29th at the secondary school Goce Delchev in Kumanova, and the second one on October 31st at the secondary school Georgi Dimitrov in Skopje. Our events are not open, but those who will attend, those who cannot come, you can follow it on our platform, and you'll see content that has been created by secondary school students for their peers. Good morning. I'm Jana Sotirovsky from the Helsinki Human Rights Committee. It is great pleasure and honor to be part of the program this year. The central part of our focus and our work is to protect and promote human rights. Within this context, we address the digital area and young people with the project creating a safer digital space for young people. This is financed by the Kingdom of Norway. Within the project, we have 5 main topics: media literacy, recognizing false news, gender-based violence in the digital sphere, hate speech, cyberbullying, and within this project we have a school for equal rights where high school students have created some works. You can see their works in the lobby. Days of media literacy are very important to raise awareness both among the public but also to talk about different topics and issues. And our panel is focused on ethics in artificial intelligence, which is a topic that hasn't been addressed properly. We started working on it in 2021, but kind of stopped, and I think legal regulation is very important, this issue. The EU has already adopted some regulations, but as usual, we are late, and I hope that today we'll have the opportunity to hear different opinions, positions when it comes to what are the most important ethical challenges in legal regulation of artificial intelligence, and its significance will grow exponentially in the futures. Thank you for being here. Our panel begins at 10:45. See you then. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Yelena Mladenovska from the RESIS Institute. As a member of the Media Literacy Network, we work in 3 areas: research on the levels of digital and media literacy in different segments of the population in Macedonia. Our research have been working on setting up the methodology and conducting the study produced by the agency in 2020 with the support of OSCE. Last year we adapted it. We further elaborated this methodology to prepare different research about the communication habits, positions of vulnerable categories of citizens in the east and southeast regions of Macedonia. The second area that our institute is focused on, meeting communication needs of vulnerable categories of citizens. In the past 3 years, we've been working to open media space in the public area, kind of a safe space for vulnerable citizens in the country. We are working currently in 3 regions with online media platform Local Active in the east, southeast, and Vardar region. And we are also working with CSOs that promote the rights of vulnerable categories of citizens. We are also working to develop media policies. We do research and analysis, not only for the needs of the regulator, we also cooperate with other organizations and research institutes. One of the most relevant studies that we've been taking part in the past 5 years in monitoring of media pluralism, supported by EU, and we have 32 countries are members of the EU and candidate countries. At today's conference, my colleague, Dr. Snežana Tepeska, will represent the findings about the situation of media pluralism in our country at 1 p.m. Thank you. I'm Filip Stanovsky from the Metamorphosis Foundation. I think that the event Days of Media Literacy is one of foreign manipulation and misinformation is part of item 23 of the security and foreign policy. So this overall synergy should result in a more resilient environment to such harmful influences.
Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Eleonora Calici, President of Media Ethics. This is the week intended for the development of media literacy in our society. This initiative is not only intended for understanding the ethics in media, but to distinguish between misinformation and information, and to build integrity. As part of the events of this week, as well as all week, will be the open session of the committee of the Ethics Media Council, and this session is not only a demonstration of transparency and accountability of our media, but a powerful tool for media education by opening doors for the public, the citizens. I believe that we have prepared an intensive and extremely interesting week that starts with artificial intelligence and copyright. Mr. Henke, you may take the floor.
Yeah, hello, good morning everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with you today at the Media Literacy Days. It's a special honor for me to be part of the Media Literacy Days here in Skopje. And I hope that you agree if I say that copyright literacy at least is a part of media literacy. Because if not, I can't tell much about media literacy, but what I can is to talk about to you about copyright law. I'm a lawyer, or more a legal expert, researcher from Martin Luther University in Halle-Wittenberg, which is in Germany, where I mainly deal with intellectual property issues, which have become particularly controversial in recent years. In fact, AI provokes plenty of questions, plenty of legal questions. Just think about autonomous driving and the question of liability. The same occurs in the autonomous machines regarding medicine, but I'd like to focus on generative AI. That means AI, artificial intelligence, that can produce texts, images, videos, audios. I think you all know the AI tools, Midjourney, ChatGPT, and so on. But even if we limit ourselves on those AI systems, there are still plenty of questions that are relevant to copyright law. So in the next, let's say half an hour, I would like just to outline the most important questions. And of course, I'd like to hear your opinion and of course to discuss the question with you. To this end, I would like to divide my presentation mainly in two parts. I would like to orientate myself on the process of using generative AI. In very simplified terms, you can say, or a distinction can be made between two phases. The first phase is the phase of the training of an AI system, where also, or I think perhaps the main problems occur, which is the training of AI system, generating the AI system, and the second phase is the use of the output. So the question, for example, is if AI-generated output is protected by copyright law. The more complicated issues are probably to be found in the first phase, so let's start with the first phase. In the meantime, this question arrived in the daily news, maybe in newspapers. Here also you can see articles like this. You have a headline from an article from the New York Times some days ago, where the Microsoft boss is calling for a rethink of copyright laws for AI. And I can totally agree with these, with the Microsoft boss when he's demanding for a clear regulation, or more clear, or more specific regulation on copyright topics on AI. And you can see the situation at the moment is not very clear. It's not very clear in Germany, where I come from, and also in the EU, but if you have a look to the US, China, wherever, in all the places there are the same discussion about copyright issues on AI. So what we can observe all over the world is that the number of cases, of the court cases, are rising, which means there are many problems with AI and copyright law. So this is maybe the first sobering realization of our workshop, of my presentation. Unfortunately, I cannot give you 100% certain answers for all these questions. So my task is just to point out the main issues and to arise the awareness and also to move on the discussion with you. First, let's make clear why this question, copyright and AI, is so important. By Alan Turing, maybe you heard about him. It's like the most famous AI guru from history, and they created an AI, and they think they can sell it for more than 200,000 pounds. So there is, of course, sometimes, at least sometimes, an economic value behind the individual AI output. But, however, this is probably the absolute exception. What will increasingly become the norm in the future is that AI-generated content will replace works created by human beings, and that is the main problem. And this is also economically relevant because the generation of content by AI is significantly cheaper than the creation by human authors. So what happens is that many creators fear that they will get, in the end, unemployed, they will lose their jobs, they will get, or they will replace by AI systems. Of course, this does not apply to all creators, but it does apply to many. Let's have a look to illustrators, translators, composers of background music. They all fear that their work will simply be replaced by machine-generated content in the future, and this is significantly important or problematic because the AI systems are mainly, or they're based on the content which was made by the authors. They're based on the human-made content. So in some extent, you can say that the authors, the creatives, are digging their own graves, creating new works, because their works are used for the training of AI systems. This becomes clear if we have a quick look, just a quick look at how generative AI systems are produced, and I think that most of you have a basic idea of the functioning of the training of AI systems. So it is therefore sufficient to briefly recap the basics of the generation of the training of AI systems. Although, of course, we have various methods for training AI, all AI systems are based on the fact that they must be presented with training data. This training data can be of very different types. However, if you want to create an AI that produces images or text, videos, you have to present, in first instance, you have to present the AI with text, video, and images. So if you present, there's this slogan, garbage in, garbage out. If you present garbage, you will get garbage from the AI system. But if you present high quality data, you will get high quality output. So of course, all the providers of AI systems have an interest to get high quality data, which means protected works, copyright protected works by human beings, because they won't have an output which is similar to human creations. So what the AI systems are doing is that the AI system recognizes pattern in the training data and continues to adapt these patterns. So these patterns are, of course, decisive for the output. The output, therefore, also depends crucially on the data with which an AI system has been trained. And this applies regardless of whether we are talking about images, text, videos, and audios. You need the training data. So let's have a look back to the portrait Edmond de Bellamy, which was sold at Christie's some years ago. Here you can read in press that the AI system was trained, or the AI system behind this portrait was trained on a data set of approximately 15,000 portraits spanning from the 14th to the 20th century. That's the training data, and of course there are some data behind the system which is protected by copyright law. So the main question now is, the main question now is, can authors and other right holders, let's say publishers, maybe broadcasters, can they prohibit their works from being used to train the AI, or can at least, that might be a different approach, or can the authors at least be financially involved? So this is the main question nowadays in copyright law and AI. And that's not an easy question, because what the AI system are doing, it seems to be the same like that what human beings are doing. When they watch a film, when they listen to music, the AI system in principle does the same. They, let's say, have a look to the training data, but the copyright law does not extend so far that the author can prohibit, can control the perception of their work. So now the question is, should authors be able to control their works when they are viewed, perceived by AI systems? And there are some good arguments for this. The first one is from a technical point of view. The AI system needs a reproduction of the training data. It's not just perceiving an image or the text. The AI providers have to reproduce, to copy the data, for make them available for the training. So we have the reproduction, which is different to the perception by us, by humans. And another basis, another argument for the author's control over AI training is that unlike humans, AI can analyze, perceive if you want, and even memorize patterns across millions of works within just a short period of time. And that's the distinction we have to consider, that the humans can't perceive millions of works in a short period of time. So we have there are some legal arguments for the author control about AI training, and we have potentially two approaches. We could say here the first, that authors could either prevent the use of their works in AI training, or the second one is at least to require compensation for this. Yeah, you remember the authors, the creators are digging their own graves, so it might be a good idea to financially involve them in the commercial success and the commercial effect of the AI systems. And this issue is under intense discussion in Germany, in Europe, in the US, and I think it's all over the world, this discussion. In Germany, we have had a provision for this question for 3 years. This provision, you can see here, is the section 44b of the German copyright law. It says, paragraph 2, it is permitted to reproduce, that's the background, to produce lawfully accessible works in order to carry out text and data mining without any remuneration. It's just allowed by law. AI providers may use this exception. There is, paragraph 3, the limitation that authors can declare machine-readable reservation. That means, for example, in the source code, machine-readable reservation to prevent their works from being used for data mining. So there is some kind of control for the authors. The question now is whether the training of AI systems is a kind of text and data mining. So this is the discussion now in Europe, if training of AI system is part of text and data mining. The law says that it means the automated analysis of individual or several digital or digitized works for the purpose of gathering information, in particular regarding patterns, trends, and correlations. Sounds good, and most of the legal scholars are in favor of this interpretation that yes, AI training is a form of text and data mining. But of course, the creative industry, authors, journalists, for example, musicians, largely opposes this interpretation. It's clear because they want, which I totally can understand, a remuneration for the use of their works. They have also a good argument in favor, or one of the arguments is that our German law is based on European copyright law. German copyright law is largely harmonized by European copyright law, and this provision in German copyright law is based on Article 4 of the EU Directive of the Digital Single Market. It's the so-called DSM, Digital Single Market Directive, and that's the legal basis for this limitation of copyright. And this limitation, or this directive, was adopted in 2019, and so the creative industry now say that in 2019 it was not foreseeable, or the capability of AI systems were not foreseeable. So this provision can't be applicable to AI training systems. So that's just a discussion. I just want to give you, or to point out the problem. Here we have potential for further discussion later. I'm open to revisiting this debate if desired. But finally, clarity on whether AI training is covered by this regulation or not, we will only have with a decision of the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, that one day has to decide whether AI training is allowed under this provision or it's not allowed. Until such a ruling, authors and also the AI industry face legal uncertainty regarding the use of copyrighted works in AI training. So, to make it clear, it's just unclear. So now, let's move on to more bad news. There's another key problem. Even if the ECJ will or makes a decision about this problem, if training of AI system is allowed or not, we have the problem of the territorially limited effects of copyright law. That's the fact that Macedonian copyright law only applies in Macedonia. European copyright law only applies in Europe, within the EU. But what happens with the AI training? It's outside of, or mostly outside, I guess, from Macedonia, and also not in the EU. It's in the US and in China. So, meaning that the copyright law of the location where training occurs governs its legibility. So, we had to change, in theory, the law of the US or China, which is, of course, impossible. So our laws, yours and ours from Germany, have limited effectiveness in regulating AI training conducted outside their territories. But...
Но имаме и добри вести. Сега имаме закон за вештачка интелигенция, усвоен пред само еден.
This regulation is not about copyright law, or not mainly. It's more a product safety rule, stipulating some requirements for to put in place an AI system, especially high-risk AI systems. But within this regulation, we have Article 53 that says providers of general-purpose AI models shall put in place a policy to comply with union law on copyright and related rights. And now some legal scholars interpret this provision that every provider who wants to put their system in place on the European market have to provide a policy to comply European copyright law. Even if the training occurs in the US or in China, they have to comply with the European copyright law if to want to provide their services within the EU. So that might be the so-called Brussels effect, which you might know, that European law applies in other countries which are not in the EU. But again, there is ongoing discussion if we have to interpret this law in that way. On this point, I'd like to have a brief digression into this AI regulation. Once again, it's more about product safety, safety of the AI systems. But it contains several transparency requirements, especially relevant to generative AI systems, and this might be for your interest in terms of media literacy. So we have Article 50, paragraph 2, providers of AI systems, including general-purpose AI systems generating synthetic audio, image, video, or text content, shall ensure that the outputs of the AI systems are marked in a machine-readable format and detectable as artificially generated or manipulated. For users, this is not very helpful because they have to mark them in a machine-readable format. It's not very helpful for the users. But there's another provision in paragraph 4. Deployers of an AI system that generates or manipulates image, audio, or video content constituting a deepfake shall disclose that the content has been artificially generated or manipulated. So the deployers must disclose if content was AI generated, but only if we have a deep fake. So if an image is AI generated, there's no provision, just fine to put it on the market on social media. But if it is a deep fake, the deployers have to make that clear. So it might be a good rule, but it's only for deepfakes. And deepfake means AI-generated or manipulated image, audio, video content that resembles existing persons, objects, places, entities, or events, and would falsely appear to a person to be authentic or truthful. I think it's a very broad definition, but at the end, it's not a comprehensive transparency rule. It only applies to deepfakes. Okay, let's come back to copyright law, to the first question we had. If the AI training, the training of AI system infringes copyright or not, we have to say there are more questions than answers. I'm very curious about to learn how Macedonian law addresses these issues, but I presume, I guess, that in Macedonian copyright law you will have the same problems, because we can observe that we have these problems all over the world. And of course it would be very nice to find an answer within your copyright law, but I think it's a global problem. And till now it's very uncertain if creators will be remunerated for the use of their works for the AI training. But to be fair, there are of course some AI providers which that already purchase licenses from the right holders. Why? Because on the one hand they want to ensure to stay on the legal basis for their services, and on the other hand, of course, they want access to high quality data, and they get high quality data sets if they ask the right holders for permission. So let's see how the developing will be in future. I'd now like to switch to the second phase, the AI outputs, the copyright protection of AI output. So I'd like to focus on whether AI outputs can qualify for copyright protection. So is there any control about AI-generated content? Here you can see the AI-generated image which was generated by Midjourney, that was submitted by Jason Allen. Maybe you notice this picture from newspapers. Submitted by Jason Allen at the Colorado State Fair. And of course, he won the prize of this competition, at least $300 US. So this indicates that, yes, there is an artistic value behind AI-generated content. But that is not our question. If it's not important for copyright law if there is an artistic value behind an output. The copyright criteria is that we have a personal intellectual creation. Personal intellectual creation, and that typically requires a human creative process. So you can find it very clear in your Macedonian copyright law. I'm not sure if it is Article 9 or 17, but it's not important. It's said that the author within meaning of this law, of this copyright law, is a natural person who has created the copyright work, which means that we need a human being creating a copyright work, image, text, video, whatever. In Europe, within the EU and in Germany, we don't have that clear rule, this clear provision, but in fact it's exactly the same. All over the world you need a human process, a human creative process to get copyright protection. So let's come back to this image created mainly by the AI tool Midjourney, but as you can read in the press, in the newspapers, that the Jason Allen, the author, the artist behind this work, made some manual edits. But as you can see, this was just from little effect, little influence on the final image. So this raises the question of the required degree of the human input for copyright protection. And also here we don't have any clear answer on how much human influence is needed, because it's hard, it's a challenge to quantify the human input behind the AI output. But of course, using AI does not per se disqualify a work from copyright. Here it's like using Photoshop, maybe Microsoft Word. Of course, you can use tools for the creation of your work. The question is to which extent it must be used. So when AI is used purposefully under specific human instructions, specific prompts, the result may be attributed to the person providing those prompts, providing these instructions. But the copyright protection ends when human influence on the product is just minimal or even non-existent. So drawing the line is very hard. We need a case-by-case assessment, but yes, it's possible to get copyright protection for AI-generated content, but not if the human influence is deemed too small. So if the influence is too small, you won't get any copyright protection, which means no control over the AI output. This same applies here on this Edmond de Bellamy portrait, which was sold for more than $400,000 US. You might ask yourself why you should pay more than $400,000 US for a picture which is not protected by copyright law, which means that anybody can copy this picture. But the authors collective says that even if the algorithm creates the image, even if the AI creates the image, we are the ones, the artist collective, who decided to print it on canvas, sign it with a mathematical formula, and give it a golden frame. If you see it here, you can see the mathematical formula, and they said it's the formula of the AI system. I don't know if that is true, but they said it's that. And they have their point. If this picture is generated by AI, by an AI system, it's not protected by copyright law, but they edit the frame, they choose to put the formula on the corner, so there might be a copyright protection for the combination of all these elements. So the question is not only if whether a product is protected by copyright law, but it's much more the question is how or to which extent the protection is. So it requires a careful differentiation between AI-generated elements and those based on human creative elements. Okay, so now the last question is about liability. Liability for AI output. And for this I'd like to use the SpongeBob SquarePants, which I'm sure you all know. ChatGPT was asked by the New York Times to generate an image of an animated sponge in pants. The New York Times asked, create an image of animated sponge wearing pants, and the response was this. This picture was the response of ChatGPT, and this is, of course, very similar to the original one. And from a copyright perspective, you can, in my opinion, totally say that is a copyright infringement. It's a copyright infringement because of the noticeable similarity. Yes. So I tried it by myself. I asked ChatGPT create an image that resembles SpongeBob SquarePants. The response was this. I can't create an image of SpongeBob SquarePants due to copyright restriction. So I'm, as a legal expert for copyright, was very happy to see that. Oh, wow, they're accepting copyright. And to be honest, I don't know why, but I tried it again a few days later. Again, with the same prompt, create an image that resembled SpongeBob SquarePants, and the response was this. I really don't know why I got this response. Once again, a perfect copyright infringement. So, in the meantime, ChatGPT has changed its mind. I don't know why, and I think, I presume that even the provider of this AI system, that OpenAI, can't even tell us why ChatGPT changed its mind. Because AI, to a certain extent, is always like a black box, and you can't say why the response, the output is that and not the other one. So this illustrates that the AI systems increasingly respond with copyright restrictions, yes, but the protected content can still appear in outputs. So what does that mean? Maybe even for you in education or as a journalist, we, the users, bear the risk of potential copyright infringement when using the output. Maybe publishing the AI-generated content on social media, maybe in an article for the newspaper. It is possible that there is some copyright-protected data within the output, so there is a risk of liability for using this AI-generated content. Because it was the choice of the user to use this specific AI-generated content, and this implies the responsibility for any copyright issues. And this liability also might extend to intermediaries, let's say publishers. There's also the risk for liability for using the AI output. Of course, the risk is limited in most cases to injunction and removal, no liability for damages because there's a lack of intent and lack of negligence, but at least there is a risk of liability for intermediaries. Speaking about liability, we arrived at my last slide. I want to add another question, which is once again not a copyright thing, but maybe once again interesting for you using AI output. The users has to, of course, users have to they have to apply or they have to fulfill the contractual obligations, because in some cases there is this the contractual obligation by terms and conditions that the use of AI is limited, for example, for the private use. So we have here the terms and conditions of Suno AI, which is an AI system for creating music, and they say it's not allowed to use the output for any commercial purpose. It's just forbidden to use the output for any commercial purposes. Of course, it's not fully forbidden, because if you see, have you look at the next provision, you can find if you want to use this output commercially, you have to subscribe, or you need a premium subscription, and of course you have to pay for it. But I just want to point out that there is this problem, that there are contractual obligations or limitations for the use of AI output. But for now, I'd like to conclude my introduction to AI's copyright issues, but of course I'm very happy to answer your questions, and yeah, may have a look forward to the discussion with you. Thank you. So if there are any questions, just feel free.
Jaz bi postavila vprašanje.
From your presentation, we could see that European Union has already adopted an act regulating certain aspects of artificial intelligence, but this act does not protect consumers. So we're talking about the protection of authors, but also of the users. Do you know if any directive of the European Union is being developed to protect the consumers, so when they use artificial intelligence?
So yes, the AI regulation, of course, it's for the protection of consumers. It's not just the providers, it's protection of consumers, but not users of AI systems or generative AI systems. Not that much media, protection of the media users. It's more the high-risk AI systems, which I said in medicine or in different aspects, but not the generative AI, deepfakes and so on. There are only these provisions for transparency, which we already have in other regulations. There's the DSA, Digital Services Act. There are also some transparency rules. They may apply for generative AI, but just for certain cases, not for all cases. But there's no special protection for media consumers, let's say, but we have this provision I mentioned before, Article 50, transparency obligation for the deployers of AI systems, but as I said, only for deepfakes, but at least there is this transparency rule, which is quite important, I guess. The problem about this rule, this provision, is if the deployer of an AI system, let's say I create an image, a deepfake, and I put it on social media, and now the next user uses this deepfake, this image, he is not under the obligation of the AI Act, because he's not the deployer of the AI systems. So there's no general rule for transparency for AI-generated content, which might be helpful, especially regarding to media literacy and consumers, child, but it's not addressed in the AI Act. The idea of the AI Act was different. The negotiations started some years ago, in, 2020, 21, and they had not the focus on generative AI systems, so they had another idea what should be covered by this regulation. Yeah.
Благодаря.
Thank you. My question is the following. In your presentation, you said when using AI and AI generating contents, we have to be careful not to generate deep fake content. So my question is, who would be liable if someone posts a deep fake, AI generated deep fake? I will give you an example. Let's say there is a big earthquake with disastrous consequences. So someone tries to make them even worse, the images, by using AI-generated content. Who is going to judge whether it's deep fake and who would be liable?
Who would be liable for the use of the deep fake? In first instance, regarding the AI Act, it is the deployer of the AI system, because he has to make it clear to disclose that this image was created by an AI. But liability, so the next question is, I think, are the users to make the image available to the public on social media, are they liable for the use of this content? And that's not, it's not a copyright question, it's also not a question of the AI Act, it's not about the product safety, which is the AI Act, it's a product safety rule, but it's more a general question of liability for deepfakes. And of course, it's the one who creates the image. It's the one who creates the image. It might be the person who distribute or make or share the image online. It might be, but there's only, in most cases, the liability for injunction and removal, not for damages. In most cases, there won't. I don't know if there are any damages in your case. So it might be helpful to have the liability for injunction, but of course you need someone who claimed for the injunction or for the removal. It might be public agencies, or collective societies. But you have the liability of the user. The problem is, on social media, you have like thousands, millions of users who can be, in theory, liable for this action. So it's interesting if the platforms, let's say Instagram, Facebook, Google, TikTok, if they have the liability. And in German law, we would say yes, they are liable. They have the liability, once again, only for the for injunction and removal. But I think that's the right person, the platform, because it's the effective way to get out the deepfakes from social media. But yes, they are liable in theory. In theory, yes.
In your presentation, you mentioned that the portrait, I forgot the name, was sold for $325. Who got the money? I have an additional question after you provide your answer to this one.
Guess you are talking about this picture? It was sold at Christie's, so I guess that Christie's, the auction house, got some provision for that. But I think the main money was going to the Authors Collective. The Authors Collective. But that's, once again, not a copyright question. It's more a contractual question. I could sell this picture to you, to everyone, as I said, without the frame and without the formula, because the combination is protected by copyright law, the picture is not protected by copyright law. So I could sell this image to everyone, and if you want to pay $400,000, feel free. But it's a contractual question. If I'm the seller, I will get the money, and I think the seller in that case was the Artist Collective. Yeah. Do you have another question?
It's not about copyright, but the creator of the content, or in particular this image, which is artificial intelligence, whether it is a natural person or a company, it has to be, they have to be liable, so it cannot be just a sale of a product. You say that there is an input and output. Whoever provides the input, whether it's text, video, or other contents, they have to be liable for the output, for the generated content, whether it's deep fake or misinformation. So it cannot be said that the output is AI generated and no one is liable for it.
So we have the liability of the providers of AI systems for the transparency stipulated at the AI Act. They have to mark in a machine-readable format that the content is AI generated, but that's their obligation. Now the question is if we have this mark, that they make it available in a machine-readable format, that the image, for example, is created by an AI, but if the image is on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, the users are not interested in the machine-readable marker. Is OpenAI, in this example, liable for the deepfake itself? I would say no, because, relating to German liability law, because there is the link between the output and the AI system it's not, it's just too far, it's not, you can't attribute the AI output, the specific AI output to the provider of the AI system. Well, it's in my opinion, from the German legal perspective, you can't attribute the AI output to the provider, but it might be helpful to create a liability of the AI providers. But the question remains, if we have this AI output like a deepfake, and the deepfake is on social media, I think the provider can't help to remove the picture because it's on Facebook, it's on Google, and I don't know. So the liability would be one piece of liability, but won't solve all the problems of deepfakes within social media. Yes.
Още едно прашање.
One more question to you when it comes to liability and the copyright model. You mentioned that the provision in our country understands or means just a natural person. However, are there any changes foreseen when it comes to copyright as an author, a natural person, and a company that stands behind the AI model that is used and generates a certain kind of content? And how do you think we will move forward with providing evidence that certain authors use AI models to generate their content? And what kind of liability is there? Is it institutional, or when it comes to organizational structure, and how it can be proven?
So there, you've mentioned, or you point out very important questions. The first thing with the natural persons, I think it's very common, at least in the European copyright law, not in the Anglo-Saxonia law, but in European copyright law you need a natural person as a creator. It's always the natural person behind a work, which is the author within the meaning of the copyright law. But of course, the author, and of course if we have more authors, they can give licenses to a company. So, which is mostly the case, that a company behind the author is the right holder, and go for which use the rights of the protected work. There was a discussion if we need to change the copyright law to have an e-person, the electronic person. We had this discussion within the EU, if we need an e-person to get like a legal person which might be liable for damages, for example, but as I see it, the discussion is just not existent anymore. So I think it won't change. Maybe in the US or even in Great Britain, it's kind of easier to have because there's another system. They say they have the work for hire doctrine. The person who gives the money is the author behind, or the right holder, which we don't have. And I guess in Macedonian law, it's the same. It's just always the natural person. But of course, it's a problem if you are in court and you say, it's my picture. painted it, and the other one said, no, I think this picture, this image was created by an AI. So this is very hard to prove. So the question of evidence, how to prove that an AI output is created by a human being, or in the other case that the AI output is generated by, or that the output, the content is created by an AI. So the best for authors is to have evidence of the process creation, by the creation, or the process on the creation of their work, which sometimes is quite hard. And I think the most authors, composers, painters, they are not interested in to have a documentation of their working process. But from a legal perspective, it might be helpful for the cases. So the other question was what was the other question for the using of AI evidence for? There was another evidence question.
Well, the organizational issues, but then again, I would, from the process of digital identity of a natural person, how do you prove the process between the e-person, the digital identity that he or she holds, between the natural person outside of all, the digital world? And then again, the second process, which institution, organization, is going to hold the liability process in order to prove that big tech companies are not behind or not cooperating and collaborating with these digital identities in order to mix and match different outputs, as you say. So how do we watchdog the watchdog who is actually the author of this?
Yeah. So this is a
Како што споменав претходно, ова е општ проблем.
Mostly that we don't have public enforcement of copyright law, speaking about copyright. So every person, every author has to give evidence for himself. He has to prove that it's his work. So it's a private problem, and once again, so you have to have a documentary or documents or even other persons who can prove that the content was created by the author and not by the AI content. And if you want to have copyright protection for an AI-generated content, you should have the prompts you put into the AI system and save them. That's where the prompts for this AI-generated content to prove that there was enough human influence behind the AI-generated content. This is the theory. If the authors will do that, save their prompts, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Yeah.
I would like to provide a local example that it might be unfamiliar to you. I think that it will serve as an answer to some questions. When ChatGPT became available, there was a compilation of short stories of a Macedonian author. She included a segment, a story fully generated by AI based on her previous work. So not works of other authors, but on her work. In this case, I believe that the use of AI does not infringe copyrights. In particular, her use by not marking the one that is a result from AI does not mean anything else but using a tool to improve the efficiency of her writing. However, it does not mean that she misused or infringed copyright, which means that we have a new situation where the tool has been used in the same way that it would be used as a writing machine or a computer. So to tool to help you realize your work. So it's a local example that could be symptomatic and problematic in a way when we are answering these questions.
Yes, absolutely. It's very symptomatic. If I see it right, that there was an author who used their own work. So this is not, at the end, not a copyright problem, because the author is the right holder. He can do whatever he wants with his own works. The interesting question is, if we would use the poets, the stories of this author, and we will get a poem or whatever which is similar to the other ones, but which is a new one, is that a copyright infringement? And in most cases, the output, just speaking from the output, it won't be a copyright infringement, because maybe the style of the author, the style is not protected by copyright law, just the individual creation. But yes, you're right. If you're using AI systems just as a tool, as I mentioned before, it can be that you have a copyright on this output, but it's not. It might be that you won't get a copyright, because if you say, yeah, my last poets, use it for make a new one, the influence on the new one will just be too small to get a new copyright on the new output. But if you prompt individual, no, I don't like this story, use these words and this rhythm, for example, you will get, in most cases, you will get the copyright. But it's a case-by-case assessment whether you will get the copyright if the human influence is high enough, or it's not, just too small, the influence, and then you won't get the copyright. And the end is, you can control the use of the output, or you cannot control the use of the output from a copyright perspective. Yes. Finished the discussion? Yes, I think you have still a long program to go today and in the next weeks. So I wish you all the best for the Media Literacy Day. Once again, thank you very much for having me here. If there are any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I can give you my email address if you want. Just ask me, feel free to ask. I'm very happy to get some insights in Macedonian law. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
I would like to invite you in the foyer and a short 15-minute break, after which the second session, we will attend the second session organized by the Helsinki Committee for Human Rights.
Čuvanja, ne znam da li ako imaš vidana. Jedan govor pomalo, tako što... Tako, Njorska.
Da li možda počnem?
No later.
Can we begin?
Во ред, да продолжиме понатаму со интересни...
Let's continue with our interesting discussions on the topic of artificial intelligence. Thank you again. Thank you for the agency and the Helsinki Committee for Human Rights for giving me the opportunity to facilitate this panel and to add a few questions, if not answers. I believe that by the end of the day, we're not going to be able to answer every question, but at least to bring them up, if for no other reason, to some things to be clearer. So I would like to thank panelists for today. So we're going to introduce them. I tried to before this event, I tried to Google you and see as much data as possible, but I thought it's best to hear it directly from the source. So when we speak about artificial intelligence and when we speak about authentic, original, unique data and information, so please introduce yourselves. I'm Anis Sefidanis, professor at the Faculty of Machine Intelligence and Robotics at the University St. Paul in Ohrid. We have very interesting Data is what makes us different from robots, the ability to create. So we are going to continue to discuss. Do you think only human beings are able to create, not robots? Do the robots need prior information to be able to create? How, in fact, do they create? Where did AI come from? Are we speaking about AI as a process, or we're speaking about models of creating content? What are we talking about when we talk about AI? Very interesting question. So the idea of artificial intelligence is nothing new. There is a coin discovered on the Crete island, and it's from 3rd century BC, and it shows an image of a machine that was supposed to be made of bronze that would be able to anticipate the movements of pirates that would attack the island. The point of human intelligence, or the difference between human and artificial intelligence, is that human intelligence can anticipate or assume what comes next in the future. So the way humans we use cycles, patterns that we observe around us, and based on them we create a certain model that is able, with certain precision, to predict future event. So artificial intelligence does not differ from ours. So it learns from data created by people, the entire cumulative knowledge created by humans, which has been available digitally since the 90s, thanks to the internet, and thanks to the access of computers that can use machine learning for the purpose of creating models to use as assumptions for the future. So our artificial intelligence has been our invisible friend from the future for a while. So to come here, I used Google Maps. When you buy online, the mediators between the seller and you are AI models. So overall daily communication is through agents that are based on AI, and so when it comes to digital media, the mediators are again AI-based agents. You're saying that artificial intelligence, it gives us patterns of structure. So we have to accept that there's a range of neurodiversity. Of course, humans have the advantage because AI systems can only partially emulate what we call mind, or cognition, or judgment, decision making. So AI does it successfully. ChatGPT is proof of that. But you also have emotional intelligence, empathy, which also makes people different from each other. So based on AI-based agents or artificial intelligences, there are multiple classifications. We have neural and generative AI. So you have some like Alexa that is specified for a certain task, which is to answer your question, or a Tesla car to take you to take the shortest route and safest route to take you to your destination. But although AI has been presented as the Holy Grail, and the purpose is to find a formal mathematical model to represent human consciousness in a digital model, which can learn from us and do whatever we can do, regardless of the context or the sphere. The humanoid Optimus, produced by Tesla, they introduced it recently. Alshar, which is a humanoid developed based on technologies of mechatrons and machine learning in Macedonia. So their purpose is to be able to adapt to a new concept, a concept that had not been previously available to the AI. So, what is the context of adapting AI-based agents? We have another classification: AI built or supervised machine learning and unsupervised. The first approach is the paradigm of deductive learning, and the second one is inductive learning, which is when AI can develop scenarios that were not previously available in the data set, and to use it in the future to handle different situations, unknown situations, or unknown to us. That is the difference between the scope of what we call intuition. Intuition is based on individual or collective, but still limited experience and knowledge, while AI can take a super perspective of entire human knowledge from different sources, different formats. That way is like learning to operate a motor vehicle. So you take lessons to where you learn how to drive it, and then you use it at an isolated area, but then you use that knowledge on any street, any boulevard in the world. In that way, artificial intelligence can generalize and find insights that were previously unavailable and be a lot more specific when it comes to its prediction. So as I call it, it is our invisible friend from the future that serves humanity. Machine-based learning models managed to detect cancer 5 years earlier than any doctor would have been able to do. And then Tesla vehicles handle well traffic accidents to minimize human damages and to create more material damages if it has to choose. So for a moment, or during the panel, I don't want to use the word artificial because it creates a stigma in the evaluation of the possibilities that could be offered by this technology, because if it is a product of the human mind, and human mind is natural, I don't see how it's ultimately artificial. So according to the myth of Thales, its concept primarily was to protect us from misfortunes. We should not view it as our enemy or make it our enemy by labeling it that is something harmful. Don't you think it is too dangerous to question the humanity of AI, or just put a simple equation because, but when we name it AI, we create a barrier between what is humanoid creation and entering data. If I may remind you from the previous session, the panelist was speaking about inputting certain data sets to get output that would be able to create something else. You mentioned it as benefits of AI. We'd have better decision-making processes and better decisions, but the database used for this machine to learn, so you mentioned the term machine learning is the old term for artificial intelligence. To me, it sounds tricky or risky to equate it with human intelligence. Human intelligence and intelligence of some systems cannot be the same. Where are the ethics? Where are the principles? Where we, as contributors to these models, these machines, we should have compared to models created by machines in order to summarize them. Should we create some distinction here? I agree, we shouldn't equate these technologies. That's why we have a range of terms. We haven't accepted all forms of human intelligence. We speak about a singularity, human civilization. We forget that there are multiple civilizations. We speak about single human intelligence, while all the fruits of biodiversity are stigmatized. So whether if it's someone diagnosed or classified as something, they enable us to have exclusivity and set up a hierarchy. We should identify which fear is realistic and what is phobia. Artificial intelligence is nothing but a mirror of collective human consciousness. So whatever it presents to us, it is us. So if we suppress it, it will demonstrate in a more subtle form. We've faced this issue in the past. Let's forget about any kind of utopian or dystopian vision of the future driven by AI. We shouldn't overestimate what is the current stage of AI. It is not created in a vacuum. It is the result of exponential growth of hardware and software technologies, and we have other things like philosophy, anthropology, psychology also played a part. Were we ready for this? You said it didn't just come at once. No, we were not ready at all. We were not ready for anything. I think that AI can help us in the future to be ready for much greater challenges. Thank you, Professor. We'll end with an optimism on the first round. Now the second panelist. Thank you, Liliana. Thank you, the Helsinki Committee for Human Rights. I'm Mila Yusufovska-Danilovska, the past 5 or 6 years program manager in the Metamorphosis Foundation, which has been promoting technology for over 20 years as a tool to improve the life of citizens and utilize its potentials to take part in various social processes. So, Mila, what are the ethical principles and what is the effect on human rights? I know you conducted some research. So what are the stats? Are we going to be as optimistic as Professor or pessimist? What would be your conclusion? One of the main reasons why we did such research, we were looking at the effects of technology or AI on human rights, because the protection of human rights on the internet is one of the basic principles that drives our work. So use of AI was another incentive for us to do this research. And we also announced that we're going to have a national AI strategy. The Fund of Innovation and Technological Development started that initiative, so we believe that this could serve as a foundation to further develop that strategy. So what this research gave us as conclusions after reviewing different EU legislative acts and recommendations and instructions for various international and professional bodies and institutions. Also, there are a lot of advantages by using AI, by increasing the efficiency, making the life of citizens easier. There is an element of risk that could arise for improper use, for bad purposes, for malicious purposes, whether it be protection of privacy or human decency. So there is a need to set up ethical standards and clear regulations that would protect human rights, but not to stymie technological development, because it takes time to develop rights. On the other hand, we have technology which is growing at a lightning speed, so we need to find some kind of equilibrium. So based on these findings, we support several ethical principles. So the explainability of the systems, which means they are transparent, and from the stage of testing development, putting into operation, monitoring the system, we can understand how they function. Then protection of dignity, meaning that AI-based systems follow human dignity, independence, autonomy, do not subverge the human to the function of the system, ban on doing harm. So you cannot harm human dignity, person, or property, equity or protection from discrimination, especially when it comes to marginalized categories. The system needs to provide equal opportunities to everyone when it comes to access to education, goods, and services, but also to prevent fraud, to be committed by people using these systems when it comes to decisions that are made automatically. So also ethically and responsible behavior by AI, which includes obligation of the handlers and users of large data sets, especially personal data, and that are used for some predictable purposes in order to be able to adopt a decision. So these are the ethical standards that we are proposing through our research. A lot of them also overlap with other ethical standards arising on international level, and I think they should be followed until a regulation is adopted. Do we need regulation when it comes to ethical principles, or it will be some just dispersed conclusion that we're going to use global principles and standards? We have to make sure that they are used one way or another, whether it's going to be a law, such as the law on AI, adopted by the EU, or maybe it's going to be a strategy or a different type of rules or regulations. So, but when we create and implement such system, we have to ensure that such ethical standards are followed. Do we have some specific example during the research? You had a case study that realistically AI has contributed to harm certain human rights of a certain person or a group of people. Because we did the research for our country, we did not find such a case. We were mostly focused on the public administration and how and if artificial intelligence is used to deliver services to citizens, businesses, or other stakeholders, but we found very low level of awareness of the very term. And do we have capacities to implement such system? Do we need, how we do it in Serbia? There was a case due to misuse of the systems, I think for social security cards, the system decided that certain people would not get these cards. So it could end very badly because people depend on that income. I don't want to go into what could be the end result if they do not have access to these services provided by the government and they need it for their bare existence. Interesting. How does the use of software in public industry, how can the use of software in public administration infringe rights that the government is obliged to provide? You mentioned the car Tesla. I have to say, tell you a story. I'll remind you about the film Leave the World Behind, if you know it. It has famous actors Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke. I don't know if you've seen it. I recommend that you see it, Leave the World Behind. There is a scene. So in the film, it has a lot of references on real life events from the cybersecurity or hacking of large systems, including the Tesla vehicles. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to be in a Tesla vehicle. It was a very unusual experience, a little bit frightening. I was speaking about with a driver, I don't know if I can call it a driver, because you just sit in the vehicle and you have no control. You don't even have the sense of having any kind of control of the process. The driver was hired by a taxi company that only has Tesla vehicles. It was an elderly man, and he said, I do not have the feeling of having any responsibility in the process of driving from point A to point B. My only job is to put in the final destination, sit down and enjoy myself and talk with you during the drive. So we were both actually passengers. We couldn't decide on the route, on the trajectory, or to have any say in how we would get to the destination. It was scary because the vehicle would decide whether to move in lane A, B, or C, and to simultaneously do analysis based on statistics from all the sensors, all the rear view mirrors inside and outside of the vehicle, to be able to do the best mathematical calculation whether to switch from lane A to lane B or C as quickly as possible, and how to prevent any traffic accidents. The control process, Mila already mentioned, we need to be transparent. We should be able to bureaucratically prove to reflect the content creation process, to administer each step before we enter the data set into the software or machine learning software. What data from what data sets, from what source. That is why I'm mentioning the source. Has the source been verified by us or by others? We have 2 or 3 other unrelated sources. so that the source should be verified as a set of data that is being input into these huge generative AI data models. So we're trying to mix things up to make them clearer, but on the other hand, we try to be optimists and to tell ourselves this is going in the right direction. It's one thing to use a digital tool to have some minimum help in the process where there is no output of data or information. We can have as an output a data set, but not information, right? So within that process, when we declare that information is valid, verified, that is when we create the first step of the ethical problem. And as long as we're playing with data sets, the responsibility probably is not on us.
Interesting. First and foremost, we should be aware that the liability arises from our awareness of the individual. There are numerous drivers around the world that manually operate vehicles, which have full control over the vehicle, and they misuse alcohol, psychotropic substances, and on a daily basis we have thousands of victims from such human control over vehicles, which means that Tesla cars that have a navigating system based on several sources. First, satellite images from the satellite Iconos that circumnavigates the globe. Then we have real-time maps, data from people that have witnessed accidents on the road or construction on the road and have entered them in the machine learning system. Numerous sensors and cameras, etc., that can lead to a significantly safer scenario in safer scenario rather than when people manually operate such vehicles. So this is when we can see where we fall behind. So AI is able to if AI would be able to prevent human trafficking or smuggling or social, administrative, or other functions. So what we bring is augmented by these technologies, and yes, there is a hazard, there is a risk that our malicious intentions are multiplied numerously. So the cyberbullying was only conducted in the schoolyard, and now it can be multiplied by ChatGPT, augmented by it. So education is the only tool or weapon that we can use to address future challenges. So we're already living in the fourth industrial revolution, so AI is transforming the world at the least as to the extent as electricity has done. So there should be a regulation. Legal liability comes first. However, we need to understand that there are other processes regarding collective awareness where liability becomes less and less individual. So there's GPT. We have persons that create literature or other things. So it comes to copyright. There's the question who gets a copyright of this content, or who is liable for an accident caused by an AI agent. So it would be a collective liability. I think we're living during a transition, and we're entering a post-human era, and we cannot copyright every content as our own, while simultaneously prescribing liability to everyone else. I don't remember if someone from the audience can help me. So humanity needs to progress, and it will only happen when we will become liable for other people's accidents. Interesting. From liability to individual liability. However, let's move to public administration. So you've conducted the research with of the institutional aspect and public administration, which is the data set that we will require individual reliability within the institution and will be used as a part of the decision-making process. Referring to the example you mentioned, whether there will be institutional, collective liability or a liability of the tech company chosen for the tender for public procurement, whereas the interconnectedness, close interconnectedness between the ones that are apart from the process, the one that provide the information during the process, and the ones that bear the burden of the decision-making process. I mean, this is hypothetical. However, from an ethical aspect, liability must be undertaken by someone. So we're talking about transparency, accountability, working principles on the one hand. I don't believe that many of the institutions does not assess the impact on privacy of users as a methodology that must be conducted prior to publishing a product. The biggest controller or collector of data, of personal data, are the institutions, the public sector, but that assessment, which is a small step and in the process of the privacy protection, is needed, is necessary in order to prove that the process was respectable when it comes to the ethics involved, without the protection of the data involved at the disposal of the public sector. So there are a lot of questions. In order to open them so that we don't have to find answers to each of them, we don't always know how everything will evolve, and all of us have more questions than answers in our heads. So exactly, when it comes to liability, I cannot answer that question. I am not a legal person, nor an IT professional, so I believe that we need to have more events like this. I urge you to gather and discuss and try to find the solution, and not only the institutions of the public sector, but the CSOs and other international organizations when it comes to the protection of data. First, we need to implement the valid regulations. So there is a law, roadmaps, guidelines, and the e-learning platform, which are unfortunately not sufficiently used. And we're talking about introducing artificial intelligence in public administration. So I think that we don't have the foundation. So everything is here in theory. We're aligning with the EU legislation, hoping to become a part of the EU. However, we need to proactively implement the laws in this area in order for us to fulfill the prerequisites for including AI in public administration, and then continue to discuss or implement a system that will automate processes, facilitate them in a way. However, it will be free from discrimination, free from imposing damages to or infringement of the privacy of the users, and be useful for society. I would like to encourage you to search for the terms. When we're talking about such many pieces from the mosaic, one thing is to talk about digitalization or automation of processes, because we have been doing that for the past few years. I guess as the private sector is implementing it faster. However, on the other hand, we're talking about generative AI models and about the entry of data and data sets. And on the other side, we're talking about the decision-making process, or the final result, and the result of or reviewing the AI model that impacts that moratorium. How to do so on those decisions that AI generates, the AI system generates, or when we see that the decision is not transparent enough, or the data entry process has no integrity. I cannot offer an end result when the process itself has no integrity, and how to prove that this decision-making process or the decision made does not include all the criteria necessary, as well as including non-biased decision-making and certain characteristics of different vulnerable groups. When it comes to vulnerable groups, how can we prevent that bias that we all have, which is a fact? How can we prevent having or implementing such biases? And when do we put a stop to it? Because certain things are not okay. Do we have enough tools or mechanisms, whether the NGOs will undertake that role to correct such models? So even my question was biased. So the fight against prejudice and biasness should be everyone's responsibility. What surfaces currently, which is severely augmented, and which is the elephant in the room regarding AI, is what we have showed them. So the children are educated from the day that they're born. There are numerous websites with registered domains on remote islands that publish numerous news. So how can ChatGPT endanger the reputation of such media outlets? So we are reaping what we have sown many years ago when it comes to On punishment, what you've mentioned, I don't know what happened in Macedonia that was targeted, whether it was a politician or a citizen targeted by misinformation, and irrespective of that, everybody's dignity should be protected, and so AI-based agents and children learn such things from us. And AI-based agents are similar to children that we are raising and educating. So this means that we should impose rules and regulations on the identification of data sources. We cannot talk about databases sources because we don't know what will be a source in the future. So we have always media platforms that are always developing. So we have to know the pyramid, the foundation of which are data, from which information is extracted, based on which knowledge is created, that includes prejudice around the world. Which means that the essential difference, crucial difference between us and AI is firstly in access to data. We have a limited access to data. So what we say, white or transparent lighting, this is only for the benefit of our survival. There are other types of lights which robots can see. So we're talking about thermal cameras, sensors, scanners, and have, even if they have larger access to our privacy, they can know such things that are invisible and unknown and familiar to humans. They can detect behavioral patterns that are consciously or unconsciously covered up by humans, so that is used by the agencies for the misuse of thefts and so on. Yes, it is infringement, a violation of privacy. However, in that context, is useful. So AI-based systems used for intelligence can prevent organized crime much faster than people, because people individually or as a team cannot process such extent of data and cannot hack or learn different languages used by certain entities in the exchange of data. So it's a known pyramid of data, information, knowledge. When it comes to knowledge, we have to understand that it entails interaction with people. So if data is this ink on the paper, which generates glyphs that can be used as a contrast, information are letters that we have learned as children, and knowledge is hidden in semantics, logics, on what the whole calligraphy represents for all of us together. The same knowledge will be translated or conveyed to AI-based models, which they can be rigid when it comes to critical thinking, because at a certain point they start learning from themselves. So the danger of AI comes from being exposed to numerous prejudice, and then it continues generating different results and learning from them. So again, we need to treat it as intelligence in order for us to be able to enable it to prevent prejudice and bias to what extent is possible for us. So quality comes from quantity. And I believe that the best way to prevent a potential misuse of AI by people is to open it, to be with an open code, to be understandable and comprehensive for everybody, to be able to identify the steps in which AI learns. However, bear in mind that AI does not make decisions based on a structured algorithm where it can be all steps of discrimination, classification can be regarded and seen. But it's a complete simulation of the human mind that functions on neural networks, and people don't even know how we and why we make certain decisions, so we have limited rationality. So AI systems also have limited rationality. When it comes to the identification of sources, secure or safe for people, not only clear sources that contain only the truth, because then it would be a totally apocalyptical scenario if we mention the final or the general truth. Each technology and science and each human as a result of nature is not final. And if a certain truth is final, then we cannot classify it as the truth. Thank you, Milo. What are your thoughts and opinions? And we can close the panel. Are we to be optimistic? As the professor, we need to be cautious. First and foremost, connected to the huge data quantity, I agree that they should be different. And they should have variety, which unfortunately is not possible in our country. There must be human control in order to review the decision made by the AI. However, individuals must have the right to submit a complaint when it comes to the decision, and of course deduct whether it is good or bad. And when it comes to extensive information, we should not only follow the requirements of the regulations, but also the code of ethics and the internal morals. I will use two crucial words that you mentioned, simulation and cautiousness. So if we use artificial intelligence for decision making or to help such processes, AI will be one of the crucial mechanisms to cause cautiousness and so that we can say that we have control in our hands. I think that AI just tells us to be more cautious towards ourselves. Again, the example, if one word is said in front of the auditorium, it can have a certain impact. Thanks to AI, we know that such impact is way bigger than what we can predict, and that puts us to terms with our accountability and our own power. Thank you for our panelists, and we will end with your words, ethics and cautiousness, but optimistic. Thank you. Is there a question? Could we please allow a question, at least one, from the audience? If not, we will see you during the coffee break.
Добро, здраво на сите и од мене.
Okay, I got the green light. We can start with the third part of the conference. I'm glad to see so many people who will understand my topic. We agreed maybe it would be best for the focus of the conference to finish with the topic, what kind of policies do we need in the time of artificial intelligence? The previous debate reminded me of the debates 2 or 3 decades ago we had technological determinism, whether technologies determine our lives or we decide how to use them. I want to say what the most important conclusion is the risks do not arise from technologies but from misuse of the technologies. And in the context of artificial, especially generative AI, in the area of media and journalism, on one hand can be used for very positive purposes as a tool that helps journalists, but on the other hand it could be severely misused by different entities to spread disinformation. And that's the main risk from misuse of such technology, but other technologies as well. So I think the main question is, how can we as a society organize, what kind of policies should we adopt, what kind of laws, what kind of actions and measures should we take to reduce the risk? The risk will remain. It is impossible to completely eliminate it. So the topic of my presentation was not put by accident. I'm sorry, I have some issue with the computer. So it is not accident, say, boosting risk awareness of disinformation. Boosting risk awareness. These words were not selected by accident. This concept is the result from the with the research published by the Institute from Florence in Italy. They analyzed policies of European Union and some candidate countries when it comes to media literacy and fight against disinformation and in the online space. So before talking about the concept, I want to incite you all to think and discuss what our policies are lacking in this area. But before that, I have to introduce you with the findings on the assessment of the situation with media pluralism 2023. So the assessment is always published for the previous year because the research is very complex and huge. It involves very high quantities of data. So we look at 3 things: conceptual framework and data about the risks to media pluralism in a country. And then where is Macedonia on the ranking of countries when it comes to media pluralism, especially 2 indicators: media literacy and protection from disinformation and hate speech. And the third item is to speak about how to further develop these policies. Most of you already know the Media Pluralism Monitor. You probably read the last assessment. This is the 5th time that we've done it, and this is the first presentation, the first summary. You know, this is a very complex venture. The conceptual framework defines media pluralism in the concept of consisting of 4 key areas: fundamental protection, market pluralism, political independence, and social inclusion. is the fourth area which is relevant for today's topic, because in this area includes two indicators: development of media literacy and protection from misinformation and hate speech. Each area has 5 indicators. Each indicator has a set of variables, total variables over 200 question, includes the entire monitoring. The process of data collection is very difficult and labor intensive. It takes several months, and then we use an algorithm set up by the Media Pluralism Center to make a judgment, to an analysis. And MPM usually focuses on news, and it includes a broad definition of media, which means diverse information channels. So not the media in the traditional sense of the word, but any source of information existing in the media. And a lot of risks arise from that fact when it comes to proliferation of disinformation or misinformation. And when it comes to MPM, we are improving it every year to include the latest technological trends, and it also monitors structural issues in the way social network affect the information space or the media space in general, both their services and their business models. But I don't want to keep, let's keep it short. So this is the main chart that shows the situation when it comes to the risks on media pluralism in our country, but risks are rated from 0 to 100. Up to 33% is low risk, 34 to 66 is medium risk, and 67 to 100 is high risk. We do not have low risk in any of the area. The area of fundamental protection, we have 2 lines. So the blue lines measures all the indicators offline and online. The red line applies only to the digital space, and there is a difference in risks in general in the entire area and in digital space. Fundamental protection is a medium level risk in the total score, and in the digital space 39%. Market plurality is an area where the risk is the greatest, in both scores 72 and 75. But when it comes to political independence, the total sum is 46, which is medium risk, but in digital sphere the risk is 90%, and this is mostly due to the fact that online media, the regulations are not cover them, so they are not protected and have any protection for political influences, and a lot of corruptive practices have been identified when it comes to distribution of funds for political advertising during elections. So all these specific issues constitute variables when it comes to the indicators. So I want to help you how we came to this number. So the social inclusion area when it comes to the digital domain is high risk, and in the total, so including traditional and online media, the risk is borderline. So it's medium, but bordering on high risk. We have the situation compared to 2022 have become worse in 3 of the 4 areas. So as I mentioned, the greatest and chronic risks is for years now, it's been market plurality and social inclusion. And what I have to emphasize, last year among the general conclusions, we said that the government had the opportunity to change the policies strategically, but did not utilize that opportunity fully because there was a big project supported by the European Union, but was only half done. So they conducted all the analysis, all the draft new laws and amendments to current laws to harmonize with the latest EU regulations, but that project was not finished. But you know what happened? In February, despite the expert opinion, we introduced amendments to reintroduce state advertising, and our recommendation was, after the election in 2004, the relevant ministry to continue the process of reform and all the opinions to be transparent as we were trying to do previously. In special areas, the fundamental protection is the regulatory pillar of media pluralism. So it involves all indicators when it comes to basic guarantees pursuant to the international standard built into our legislation and their practical implementation. We have 5 indicators. You can read about them in detail. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You can read the report. General risk is generally medium, 35, but it's worse compared to 2022, mostly because of the disproportional court decision that was made against IRL, which has an effect on the non-profit online media and the general situation in journalism. Also, most indicators, we have 3 low and 2 medium risk. There are variables within these indicators that carry high risk. One such example is the employment and social economic status of journalists, about 72% risk. That's one example. But there are other issues that carry a risk, but not as high. Protection of whistleblower, we have good regulations, but very few reports from whistleblowers, a lack of legislation to prevent SLAPP lawsuits. Digital security of journalism is still a problem. We involve some provisions in the law on media. The new law, in line with the regulation of the freedom of media, but they were not adopted, those amendments. And in practice, the security of journalists is jeopardized, and also action of the regulatory body is one of the risk issues that has been put stone for years. And the framework of funding the regulator and the public service is also one of the issues identified that they carry a certain degree of risks. When it comes to recommendations, new law on media with all the provision that address these risks should begin the adoption phase. Continue association of journalists, especially association of trade unions of journalists, and adoption of a piece of legislation to prevent SLAPP lawsuits. Market plurality. These are economic aspects of the media pluralism. We make assessments of different risks: lack of transparency in media ownership, market concentration when it comes to production and distribution of content, economic sustainability of the media, issues of protection of competition in the traditional media sphere, but also especially the digital, and the prevalence of private interests when it comes to editorial policy. So we have 3 indicators with high risk rating. So 72%, the entire topic has high risk, and we have 9 percentile points worse, among almost all indicators, especially the sustainability of media and drop of revenues in the audio-visual sector, especially when it comes to local and regional media. We have a lot of variables here, a lot of issues, high-risk issues. So as economic sustainability of media is a chronic issue. There are no legal obligations for transparency and concentration of ownership in the online sphere. The problem is protection of competition of the digital market, especially from the point of view of the business models of social networks. According to the latest regulations, the states have to introduce financial obligations for online platforms. We discussed this last year when we were to discussing amendments, but we did not discuss it seriously enough. And the high risk area is the lack of financial support for production of content, especially local contents, because of the general situation of the entire sector.
Other risk questions are the lack of mechanism for the protection of the integrity of the newsroom, or their misuse when it comes to self-regulation, which is insufficiently efficient in this regard. And we've addressed other issues of interest in the new law on media and provided recommendations to take into consideration these media laws and continue the process of media reforms. And we also recommended that amendments from February 2024 on public or state advertising as well as licensing. You know why. I don't want to take much of your time. We can discuss it if needed. And enhancing the regulatory policies in order to achieve a less fragmented but sustainable sector that will be more easily financially sustainable and ask for less money for state advertising. The dimension of political independence, so how efficient are the self-regulatory mechanisms over production, distribution, and access to news. The whole dimension falls within medium risk, as it was in 2022. However, it is 90%, and it is extremely high due to online unregulated media, political influence over online media, and corruptive practices, as mentioned in the distribution of funds for political advertising. Issues here are impacts that move from in both directions. In the past years, we saw that owners and managers influenced the amendments of policies that went to their benefit. The second is lack of mechanisms for the protection of online media from political impact that are not encompassed or covered by the regulation. Then we worked with the OSCE to amend the legal framework of the MIA, which is owned by the government. The next issue was the system is in favor of the larger political parties. Then we concluded that before elections, the manifestation of political favoritism, and I don't want to number all of them. The recommendations are similar to the previous ones mentioned for different areas. We believe, as well as journalist associations and State Commission for Prevention of the Corruption, that it should be stop being implemented. There is a lack of transparency of the advertising of political parties, especially on online platforms, and we need to specify this policy further. And the competent authorities should undertake regulatory measures and to follow the reports of the State Inspectorate. and its recommendations that have been provided for the several past years. And in context of today's debate, we've reached social inclusiveness. It focuses on access to media, to non-majority groups, women, people with persons with disabilities, as well as media literacy. And the issue of protection from disinformation and hate speech. In this dimension, one of the indicators falls within the high-risk group. First and foremost is the access to local communities, to information content due to informational insustainability of local media. Within the broadcasting sector and other sectors, issues with high risk are the lack of policies and financial support for the development of local content, small access to persons with disabilities to such content, and so on. So that later on we will see that people with developed media literacy have a strategy developed on it. We haven't discussed it so far in our country, and there are a lot of additional activities when it comes to the implementation of media literacy within the educational processes, as well as low levels of media literacy among the population have been concluded, which is a problem within the EU as well. However, from previous studies that are posted on Eurostat's website, but we cannot find comparative findings for all countries. However, we know from previous studies, we know the level of media literacy in our country, so inefficient fight against hate speech and disinformation. Philip mentioned that we have been working in the past several years on a strategy on disinformation. Okay, so the recommendations for overcoming such risks are in the same direction. I want to talk about the comparative findings. So from this general graph, we can see that Macedonia, with the overall percent of risk from media pluralism, is ranked in the lower medium rank with 79%, and of which Germany is with the lowest percentage. And of course, in order to understand why countries are ranked higher on a specific rank, we have to delve in detail into the four dimensions and different indicators in order to be able to see what influences and impacts such rank. Generally speaking, the comparative report of the Media Pluralism Center shows that in the majority of European countries there is a decrease of the state of play, and only 7 countries have sufficient state of play. 17 countries are in the midterm, mid-risk zone, where we are also placed and ranked, and in comparison with other countries from the region, especially among the other candidate countries, we have a better state of play when it comes to compared to Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, even in comparison to Greece and Croatia and so on. It can be about the subjectiveness of the researchers. However, I believe that there are significant factors involved in Slovenia, so media literacy is not included within the educational systems, and certain domains have different indicators. When it comes to comparative findings of the 2 indicators relating to media literacy, so the indicator literacy is measured by the MPM by using two sub-factors, so the environmental factors, the context including the policies, as well as the indicator on qualifications, so levels of media literacy and skills. Which is interesting is that MPM uses the model published in the study of the European Association of the Interest of Viewers that was used when we have developed our methodology for measuring the general levels. In general, we can see that only 8 countries are in the domain of low risk. For example, Estonia is one of the countries that is a good example with long tradition, extensive tradition in the area with media literacy lasting for more than 10 years as a part of the educational process, and the majority of countries, or 17, are with medium risk, and 7 are with low risk. Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, and others. So the policies are consistently being reviewed. We are in the medium risk domain only because the regulator has adopted a document on media literacy, so maybe we should start discussing about the revision of this document as soon as possible. In addition, what's important for developing countries is that governments in these authorities in these countries develop means to measure and develop media literacy among the population, and supports such jobs. When it comes to the inclusion of media literacy in the educational process, only 8 countries have fully incorporated it in the curricula. In other 8, it is fully lacking in Hungary, Malta, and others, and in others 16 countries, including in our country, it is partly or it is ongoing. The process of introduction of the curricula is ongoing. Only 5 countries have programs encompassing the elderly and vulnerable groups. In other countries, it is focused predominantly on youth when it comes to protection of disinformation and hate speech. There are 2 sub-indicators: protection from disinformation, where it is assessed whether there is a comprehensive strategy for this, and whether whether different subjects are included. And the second is protection from hate speech, and it is assessed within the online spaces. Most countries are in the mid or low risk, and low risk is in 8 countries. Only 10 countries show low risk when it comes to this indicator: Denmark, France, Lithuania, and others. Among EU member states, we country candidates for the accession to EU, we are the product of the activities of the regulatory body and the NGOs. The main issue when it comes to the protection of disinformation is the average risk is 71%. So this sub-indicator falls under the domain of high risk for all countries. So it is assessed that it is harmful in all countries. Only 6 countries have made significant steps when it comes to adopting a strategy or even a legal framework. France and Germany have adopted certain laws on this field. I couldn't review it in detail. And when it comes to hate speech protection, there's a low risk in only 4 countries: Denmark, Germany, and others. The problem is that the existing legal framework for the protection from hate speech is not adjusted to address the hate speech in the online spaces. And at the end, a few theses to, prompt a debate on the future development of policies. This concept for the development of or raising the awareness of risk of disinformation arose from the findings of the 2023 MPM, which you can find in the communication that was recently published by the Media Pluralism Center in one of its chapters. So, namely, it is about the fact that despite the majority of EU member states adopting measures for the protection of hate speech and from the hate speech and disinformation, it is concluded that the majority of measures have a negative impact. Except Denmark, it is assessed that in many countries it has a negative impact, and in 13 it had a high risk of negative influence. In order to avoid regulatory fragmentation, the European Commission adopted common measures. We know them. It's the regulation on digital services and the Digital Markets Act, as well as the direct regulation on freedom of the media. But the first ones I mentioned are primarily focused on the regulating behavior on online platform in order as regulators of online platforms. However, it is assessed that the fight against disinformation cannot be just handled with one component. It's a much more complex it requires much more complex measures and actions, having in mind or taking into consideration the negative effects that could endanger the freedom of expression or freedom of speech in online platforms. So activities taken throughout Europe for enhancing media literacy are not providing a good result. From the findings of the MPM, which posed the question, why are some societies more resilient to disinformation? Findings gave the answer. There was a study conducted on 3 countries that contributes to their resilience. Generally speaking, those findings can be summarized as such. So there should be a transformation of the policies from reactive to proactive policies based on the strategy, which will be focused on raising the awareness of risk awareness, that we can educate the population and the citizens on media literacy in a short time. So we need to work on raising the awareness that such technologies have their own risk. This should be emphasized. Then manipulating this information should be regarded as a complex societal phenomena, not only as a phenomena that arises from a person or an entity that intentionally misuses such disinformation. And not only pose the liability on technology, this phenomenon stems from the socio-political context as well, so such policies should be based on multidisciplinary research, different aspects, as well as the resilience on reliance on disinformation. And the fourth item is a strategy with a comprehensive strategy to address all dimensions of the issue, and this is the model of that concept of the risk awareness of disinformation. You can see in the foundation or the basis, it's about integrating the fight against disinformation, as well as the efforts to strengthen the capacities of media for media literacy. It is about the preparedness of citizens relating to this are significantly more prepared to be educated on the impact on disinformation, which are not regarded as significantly harmful. On the other hand, the strengthening of the capacities for media literacy entails comprehensive policies for handling, implementing such policies within the education process and outside of it, and analyzing, researching, and the follow-up of the results among the population. And I would like to end here. I hope that I didn't take much of your time. I'm opening the floor to questions, comments. I would like to share my experience. I attended a workshop on media literacy with high school students from the second grade. Those are students that are not covered by the edX program. They have no connection to media literacy. The question was whether they even know what media literacy is. So what was really interesting to me is that students cannot name or brand two media. So I like that the proactivity of the story of the state. So we need to think about how it will evolve in the future. And what really surprised me is that almost 70% of students use generative AI. And the teachers and professors were a separate group which used AI, which only 10% of them used AI. We have to be aware that in 5 to 10 years, media will not exist in such way. Children perceive media as corrupted, as the first perception. However, they cannot distinguish between social media and media. Unfortunately, in many publication projects, videos can be seen very often that media literacy, social media is equated to traditional media. I don't have a specific question. I'm just putting these ideas forward. So it is fun for them. They're aware that that the disinformation are present, but however, it is fun for them. When it comes to media literacy and when it is used, it is comprehended in the most narrow way. So it is information and digital literacy. And different international organizations use different terms. The EU use media literacy, which might be considered as a bit older. But when we measure habits, sources, perceptions, and other aspects of media literacy, the concept that I mentioned, which has been developed in 2019 with the study of EAV, entails all of these concepts, all information channels, etc., and it is very frequently used, as well as said in addition by the MPM. It's not only social media, but all sources of information from which they're used by the population or influenced public opinion. So I'm not surprised that these young people are not familiar with media because from research shows that they are primarily they primarily gather information from social media. I haven't seen a newer research. I haven't seen the findings from the one that you mentioned. I do apologize. There is no mic. Hello. I wanted to add upon the colleague the research of the commercial functioning of the media around the world in the past 4 or 5 years. There's a new measurement category, which is 18 plus. This category, 18 plus, in the past couple of years shows that electronic and commercial media have a good standing. So the target group, which was previously started from 12 to 15 years, it is data that shows that traditional media are regarded with higher reputation than online media. So this is simply an information. So the biggest advertisers use these data. So of course I cannot see the numbers. I don't have them here, but it is correct that older citizens use television as the primary source to gather information. In 2015, when we read the study, and the one after that on the influence of online media, so Roger is in India, measures 18 plus. However, the trends are as such. The younger the people, the higher the use of social media to get informed. I don't know how much this trend will last. Hello. During the previous panel discussion, I wanted to mention this. However, I will do it now. So I was triggered by the colleague. If I remember well, the older population here, the first Terminator movie was published in 1984. The script says that from 2029, the mother of the child returns back in time in order to save its son because AI has separated themselves from human. It is an apocalyptical scenario. I don't believe that we will reach such scenario in the future. However, we have to take massive steps in order to keep things under control. I agree. We already have the generations which are technologically, informationally superior. However, they're not educated about the media. Therefore, throughout your presentation, you mentioned that we need massive media literacy. We agree on that it is the only proven remedy against disinformation. And I would like to add that I want to know whether you agree or not. Do you believe that it is needed for every country to seriously invest in investigative journalism or in journalism in the real sense, or if we provide financial and social freedom? I believe that true journalists will find their way to provide the information, from relevant and verified sources and verified provider, and not use verified providers of this information. Okay, yes, everything is interconnected. The more the media are more professional, the more the audience will be educated. Generally speaking, as I mentioned, technologies have their effect. Even European societies are not as coordinated and resilient because data shows that the percentage of citizens, of audience that trusts the media is increasingly decreasing. Of course, support for quality content and investigative journalism is crucial. Of course, is very important in this context. I would only like to share an information in context with your concept on risk awareness of disinformation. I attended a meeting of the European Platform of Regulatory Bodies, where a professor from the university in Vienna shared the findings of research conducted in several European countries connected to disinformation. It was very specific research that uses specific methodology. The participants were asked whether they sometimes shared disinformation and why did they do it. The majority of them in all of the countries share disinformation, firstly because they cannot distinguish between disinformation and verified information, and secondly, that they are not aware that by sharing such disinformation that they can harm somebody. And the third point is that they will not get punished, so it's in line with this concept that arises from the research. And I wanted to also share that the agency within the Twinning project is preparing guidelines intended for the general public on how to recognize disinformation and to stop sharing such disinformation. It should be finished until the beginning of next year. Thank you. This is a really interesting fact. I guess that all countries that are already developed handle the problem more seriously. We are implementing many activities. However, I do not believe that we have taken this issue seriously, even within the sectors of media and journalism, because we can see we have media that not follow the code of ethics, that are immoral and intentionally share disinformation. We have been handling such issues and addressing such issues within the Council for Media Ethics. I have no grasp of what is coming in the future. I have no answer to that question. If Snezhana is okay with this, she provoked this idea ourselves. So when it comes to what comprehensive strategy means, as well as the review on the policy on media literacy adopted by the agency. So you instigated this issue and question. I'm interested on what specifically are you talking about when it comes to the comprehensive media literacy strategy? I want to say that there are things in society that are overlapping, or two networks against hate speech. It means a comprehensive strategy means that it will encompass all domains where that phenomenon or disinformation have a negative impact, to encompass all subjects which are relevant, including regulatory bodies, public institutions, self-regulatory bodies. So where we have done this to a great extent, and we received, we were commended last year within the network against hate speech. So we resolved this issue. Recommended for the efforts of all subjects were commended on all efforts, as well as the network. We are on the right way. However, there's little engagement, there's a low level of engagement of public institutions. Maybe the Ministry of Education is engaged, but when it comes to the development and building of policies, what I have observed in more developed countries, there are institutes, separate institutes regarding these issues, especially when it comes to digital and information and IT competences and qualifications. There are efforts which are fragmented currently, and we recently held a meeting within the network. We need not double the efforts, and that narrower task force or working group comprised of competent institutions and some NGOs in order to sanction hate speech, specifically referring to explicit hate speech in online spaces. So the legal proceedings will be by the public institution and the court, public prosecution and the courts. If that is all, I thank you.